Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Stuart A. Swordlow.
And Janet Diane Moria Swordlow.
And this is the Expansions News Podcast with alien creatures. That is an alien creature. And this is mid-April 2019. And, by the way, that is our cat, Maine Coon, named Q.
Tip.
Q. Not cute, no.
Q-tip.
No, that's not on her birth certificate.
Yes, it is. It's Q-tip.
No, it's Q, and you're
Tip.
going to hear more about Q in my report.
She looks like a Q-tip.
But that's not why we named her that. Anyway, and I will invite you to stop interrupting me.
Oh, I won't.
So, let's talk about the federal prison population in U.S. penitentiaries. Now, according to this particular article, it's talking about the number of Americans versus illegal aliens in the penitentiaries. And the number of people in the United States, we have approximately 327 million people in the U.S. And officially, there's about 22 million illegal people. But the count is probably closer to 30 million. In fact, I don't think there's anybody left in Central America. They've all come here. Now, the U.S., as I've mentioned several times in the past, imprisons more people than all other countries combined. In fact, the U.S. imprisons a higher percentage of its population even than China and Russia combined. And according to this particular study, it says by population, there are 27 times the number of illegal aliens in federal prisons as compared to natural-born Americans who committed heinous crimes. And that is why they need to monitor the border so carefully, and that's why it's so important. But of course, as I've mentioned to you a few times before, what President Trump calls the border wall is not actually a wall. Even though there is a physical wall being built, it's already being built, despite what people say. But it's more than just that. It is to keep out interdimensional criminals. Which is interesting because I was just asked to do a show on Russian television about that, which I'll be doing next week.
Interdimensional
from
criminals?
Moscow. Yes, RANTV in Moscow. Anyway, speaking of prison, Julian Assange, as you know, was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London in handcuffs by a large group of officers. Not very British, was it? And the Queen was amused, though. And he faces up to 12 months in the UK jail because he was found guilty of skipping bail when he went to seek refuge in the embassy. Ecuador withdrew their asylum status for him, and they also revoked his citizenship that they gave him. So he's no longer Ecuadorable.
I got in trouble somewhere along the way.
Yes. And when he was dragged out, he kept shouting, "UK must resist." I don't know what that means. Does that mean resist Brexit, or I don't know.
The cube.
Maybe. He's Australian born. He's 47, although he looks like 147. What? Didn't he ever get a haircut or like hair dye or something?
They don't have that in
the
the
embassy,
Ecuadorian embassy.
but they have it in Britain. They could have gone to the local shop and brought it back for him.
I don't know.
But the big thing is, on May 2nd, he will appear in court for an extradition hearing to the U.S., where the indictment charges him with conspiring to hack classified documents, which resulted in the publication of 750,000 documents detailing military and diplomatic secrets that he was going to reveal. He is also charged, this is interesting, with reaching a password cracking agreement with Chelsea Manning, an Army intelligence analyst who was formerly a man, and was formally told he faces extradition to the U.S. And he said he'd be fighting that being sent to the U.S., where he has feared the death penalty because what he did was considered to be treason, just like with Hillary and Obama, and the penalty in the U.S. is execution.
Do you think they're going to make him an example?
I'm going to get to that. If we just calm down.
That's so exciting.
Just calm down and I'll get to it.
Yeah.
Now, British judge, oh, this is my favorite part. A British judge dealing with the case called him a narcissist and told him to get over to the U.S. I'm sure he said in a much more British clip than that. Ecuador said it decided to throw him out because of repeated violations to international conventions and daily life protocol. But move came just weeks after 10.2 billion international finance deal to bail out. So in other words, they paid Ecuador $10 billion to. Now, if they paid me like $1 billion, I would throw you out. I get rid of you.
I believe you.
I get rid of you.
I believe you.
But then I would secretly, pass mine.
Yeah, right.
That's what I'd. So, I'll make a deal right now. $1 billion, she's out. Okay, I'll tell you right now. But the real reason that this happened is because he has info against the deep state that President Trump will use for his indictments. Q calls Assange their source, or the source. Stop eating my watch.
Cue the cat.
Yes, Q the cat calls him the source. And so a deal will be made, just like it was with Smollett, to drop perhaps all these other charges if he sings like a bird, like an Australian parrot. Let's go to the Middle East. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as you know, won the election, which actually makes him the longest continuous prime minister in Israeli history.
Wow.
And of course, they are rechecking the extra votes that were cast by soldiers, diplomats, and people living abroad, and so on. But this is why it was so significant, besides all the other things, is because this win is connected to President Trump, President Putin, and the building of the Third Temple.
Wow.
So when I was waiting for this to happen, and now that this happened, it confirmed that the Third Temple will be built.
Wow. That would
You
be
will
major.
see that, and you will see it now. A peace treaty will be released, an agreement between Israel and the Arab nations, which will basically F the Palestinians. Anyway, now let's go to another near election, just north of us here. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's
Who you like so much.
also 47. Isn't that interesting? Guy's 47, like me. He's the head of the Liberal Party, and he's in serious trouble. Told you that many weeks now, because there's something called a Nanos research poll, and it found that if elections were held now, the Liberal Party would lose control of the government, and Trudeau would be out. The first prime minister to do so, holding a single majority mandate in 100 years. And that's because he needs to get the F out. He's a criminal. And he's a liar. Trudeau has had to answer allegations charging that members of his team, he has a team, he doesn't have a political party, he has a team, pressured Canada's former Justice Minister, Jody Wilson-Raybould, I reported on this a couple of weeks ago, to drop a criminal case against the engineering and construction company SNC Lavalin Group because they bribed Libyan officials. Trudeau had Wilson-Raybould and President Jane Philpott, who had supported her, expelled from the Liberal Party. And Trudeau told reporters, "We've taken every effort to address their concerns, and ultimately, if they can't honestly say that they have confidence in this team, then they cannot be part of this team." In other words, if they don't agree with me and they want to expose me, I'm going to get rid of them because I don't like the way they play with me. So, Conservative leader Andrew Scheer blasted the two women's ouster, asserting, and I quote, "Canadians will view the removal of Jane Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould from the Liberal caucus for exactly what it is, a betrayal of justice. Elected officials are supposed to protect individuals who blow whistle on government misconduct and corruption and not punish them. And it also said, a commenter, Darryl Bricker, who's a pollster, said, Justin Trudeau was standing on thin ice at the end of last year, and then somebody handed him an anvil and crashed, the ice broke. There's a credibility problem driven by a bunch of things, one of which is promises made and not kept. Well, and I call him Pierre Trudeau Castro because we know his father is Fidel. I reported on that a few weeks ago as well. Will be out, as I predicted months ago, and his international crimes will be exposed, including helping the CIA spy on President Trump before the election and using Canada as a conduit to illegally transfer uranium to Iran.
That's a big.
Yeah, execution time
That's
for that
a biggie.
one. Yes, and I also read an article not long ago about Trudeau's affiliation with the pedophilia ring.
Oh my.
Yeah, little pretty boy. Won't be so pretty for long. Now, speaking of things which are not pretty, in New York, of course, I couldn't be talking about myself, but New York Assembly Democrats, get this, blocked a bill that proposed expanding college tuition aid for children of deceased and disabled military veterans, but approved 27 million college tuition to aid illegal immigrants.
That's terrible.
So people who born here, lost their parents because they were fighting in the war for the United States get crapola, but people who smuggle across the border illegally and have 2 cents worth of dumbness, they get $27 million.
That's terrible.
This is the same state, by the way, that voted to abort children in the 9th month.
Or even during labor.
Yeah, this is New
Labor.
York,
Wow.
right? Something bad going to happen there.
Yeah.
Deborah Glick, who's a Democrat, of course, in Manhattan, said $27 million from the state's budget would go towards supporting the DREAM Act, allow illegal immigrants to qualify for state aid and for higher education. They come here with a dream, but of course they make everyone else have a nightmare. Now this comes from New York Post. Assemblywoman Glick should be ashamed of herself. We set aside $27 million for college for people that are here illegally, and $2.7 million is all the families of soldiers who are killed get. If you're a child of a fallen soldier, you do not rank as high as you know that by the money. So
That makes no sense.
nothing New York State does, and Governor Cuomo, who's also up the butt of the deep state, and he will also get the axe pretty soon.
Well, that makes no sense.
And I found out where these people came from.
Where?
Guess what?
Where?
Because for the first time, Chinese scientists have gene-edited techniques to make monkey brains more human-like. By the end, the monkeys, rhesus macaques, are smarter and have superior memories as compared to unaltered monkeys. Like, for example, the unaltered monkeys like AOC and Omar. Now, these monkeys can go into Congress. Maybe I should have the thing done.
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, the human gene editing is known as MCPH1, although I'm sure they say it differently in China. And the gene made the monkey's brain develop more like a human timeline. And the monkeys had better reaction times, improved short-term memories. I need all of that. And they're calling them, here's that word again, transgenic monkey.
Really?
And it's practically, to a large extent, can imitate the human-specific style. What does that remind you of?
Wow. It reminds me of Lemuria.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, from Lemuria.
That's how it started, people. Planet of the Apes. Now, this is interesting from an MIT scientist, because the MIT is up the butt of the deep state as well. And he said, his name is James Sikala, the use of transgenic monkeys to study human genes linked to the brain evolution is a very risky road to take, and it's a slippery slope. Yes, it's Planet of the Apes come to life. Well, maybe we can hire them to do our lawn and shovel snow and that kind of thing.
Imitate you?
That's not possible,
No.
because I'm not at that level as a macaque monkey. But anyway, we are going to have more snow tomorrow, believe it or not. Middle of April, another snowstorm. in Michigan. Now, going into outer space, Israel, using the first private lunar lander, crashed it on the moon. Yep, they said the landing would have been nice, but the crash was impressive as well. I reported on the Bereshit lunar lander, which means in the beginning, Bereshit.
I reported on that too.
Yeah, well, there you
We
go.
both reported. It's our third report.
And it plunged into an area called Mare Serenitatis. Sounds like a disease.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Which means the serene sea in Latin.
Never would have guessed.
But maybe it was attacked. Maybe it wasn't cracked. Maybe it was shot
That's
down. And also, from space, experts predict a long, deep solar minimum, which could last for years. Because as the sun's magnetic field weakens, holes open up in the sun's atmosphere. Emerging strings of solar wind buffet the Earth's magnetic field, which cause auroras. We've had a lot of auroras.
We have.
Without solar flares and sunspots, some observers believe the solar minimum auroras have a distinctive palette, pinker than the other phases. But remember, it looked turquoise to me, not pink.
And then you didn't wake me up, so I couldn't see it.
No, because it's like I don't care if you see it or not. Anyway, it said that it will also cause extra doses of radiation for people on airplanes. Now, I also reported long ago that irradiation could be good for you. So maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe.
Because it said, finally, the sun dims, especially at extreme ultraviolet wavelengths. This, in turn, causes the upper atmosphere to cool and contract. And guess what happens?
What?
Ice age.
I was going to say snow, so I was close.
And we're having an ice age here in Michigan anyway. Had a lot of, a big amount of snow this year. Anyway, guess what else? Speaking of ice and snow, a new thermal area that's popped up. Guess where? Yellowstone, your favorite place.
Yes, but that keeps happening.
Yes.
Every
And
other
yet
time you report on that.
but you have to listen to the story. It's yet another sign of an ever-changing magma activity beneath the surface. They said it was 8 acres or equivalent to 4 soccer fields where the ground has become so warm that the trees and vegetation has died and it has begun forming over the last 20 years or so. Now, this is my favorite part. Its appearance is no cause for concern. According to the experts, the activity goes in line with what's expected at Yellowstone. So let me get this straight. Rising magma and dying trees is no cause for concern.
Because it's in a big caldera, so I guess
Yeah.
it's expected there.
Right. So it's coming up to the surface and killing things, but no need for alarm.
No, that's Yellowstone. They keep saying that, so who
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen and when.
I think that the scientists are yellow stoned.
I don't know.
I think they're stoned.
I don't know. Is that it?
For me, for
Okay,
now.
so I just have a couple stories.
Good.
So, first
Okay,
one.
thank you for coming. And, you're not done?
I'm not done. So, speaking of New York and what they did with the abortion bill, right? In Ohio, they went the opposite. Governor Mike DeWine, who's a Republican in Ohio, signed a bill last week to ban abortions once a heartbeat is detected.
I like Ohio.
Yeah, it's about 5 to 6 weeks into pregnancy, which makes it one of the most restrictive abortion laws in the country.
I think by then you know if you want it or not.
Well, some people just are finding out,
5, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Look,
some
they
are.
know what they did.
Well, somewhat. But it's still, I mean, in my opinion,
My opinion is,
I would prefer not to have any of this. It's terrible.
my opinion is, before you do the thing that makes that happen, you should think about it.
Right. No, I agree with you because that's the risk you take.
Really?
If you get pregnant,
Exactly.
you're pregnant. It's kind of the way I feel. But anyway, it says the Ohio legislature has actually been drafting this measure for years, and former Republican Governor John Kasich vetoed similar bills twice in the past on the grounds that he did not want to spend taxpayer dollars on exorbitant legal fees to prove the law constitutional. However, just hours before DeWine signed the bill, guess what? ACLU pledged to fight it in court, saying that the bill is in direct violation of the 1973 Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision.
That's right. You cannot stop us from murdering children.
Now, the legal director of the ACLU in Ohio, Frida Levinson, said SB 23 is one of the most aggressive, oppressive, and radical attacks against women ever seen in this state and country.
It's not against women.
It's
helping babies.
Right. It's so...
Male and female.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's just all kind of convoluted here. Apparently, similar, they're calling it a heartbeat bill, has been struck down in Iowa, Kentucky, Arkansas, and North Dakota. And this makes Ohio's bill the most restrictive in the country. It does not even make exceptions in cases of rape or incest. So,
well, see, there I do disagree. I think if a person is raped or if there's incest, then you should allow, but still not late term.
yeah, well, my issue is this. I'm one of those people, I feel if something happens, it's meant to be.
Well, God forbid,
Well, I mean, God forbid I agree, but maybe, that child was supposed to come in under those circumstances. So I believe in a woman's right to her body, but I don't believe in killing babies.
Yeah, right to her body, but the baby is not her body. It's a separate body.
I don't believe in killing babies. So it's kind of...
She's just a host.
It's really a rough thing, in my opinion. Really, it's a rough thing. And speaking of something, in my opinion, which is not so rough, veganism. Don't do it. They don't think properly.
No, they don't.
Okay,
and
so
they sleep a lot.
Now that we know that, 40 vegans have been charged over the protests that shut down Melbourne's, in Australia, central business district.
They're upside down anyway.
They chained themselves to vehicles. They invaded slaughterhouses and farms in Victoria, New South...
They had strength to do that?
Yeah,
New South Wales.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And Queensland. And apparently they've promised to repeat their actions. And taxpayers, of course, are now having to pay for all this disruption because it has to be put back in order. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said the protesters' actions were un-Australian.
Oh, please.
And KAP, what do you mean, oh, please?
Australians are backwards.
So what about veganism?
Backwards.
I think that's people thinking that they're forward, but they're not. They're
I
actually
want to see them
going
take
backwards.
a kangaroo tail away from an Aborigine and see what happens to them.
Anyway, KAP leader Bob Cater said vegan activism targeted 2/3 of employment in North Queensland, namely coal, beef, and horticulture. He says every Australian has the right to put forward his or her point of view, but you have no right to impose your viewpoint on other Australians.
Unless the government says that this is what they want.
And invade their privacy. If the government cannot protect a person's right to privacy, their right to food, their right to private property, then you are not a government, and you are taking your wages under false pretenses. So, for example, if I broke into a suburban house in Melbourne or Sydney, I'd expect to be arrested, handcuffed, and taken away, and breaking into a farm should be no different.
Unless you were an illegal alien, then they would forgive you.
Maybe. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And speaking of birthing, how about birth not?
Who?
Birth not.
What is that?
I'm going to explain it to you. Okay, there's a group of women who are actually going on a birth strike. And they started an organization called Birthstrike in the UK. Yes, because they're upset about climate change.
Oh, yes.
So they don't want to bring their
help.
children into a world when it's collapsing. And actually what's interesting is, according to NBC News, the birth rate in the U.S. is 16% below what is needed to keep the population stable. And the BBC reports that according to a Lancet report since 1950, the global fertility rate in women has decreased by just under 50%. That's a lot. The Lancet survey found that from 1950 to 2017, women went from having an average of 4.7 children in their lifetimes to 2.4 children.
Not in my family. We have a lot of children.
A lot of children. But so anyway, so this is a new thing to make people not want to have children.
See, I go back to the old ways. I said, the Lord said, be fruitful and multiply, and I did.
Yeah. And in Minnesota, where, as you know, they have been having a lot of snow, right?
And we're getting that tomorrow.
Yep. A professor there was invited, and this has been actually at the end of March, but it just came to my attention, and I think it was worth reporting on. The University of Minnesota, they invited an alumni professor who believes that whiteness is an existential threat to the U.S. and needs to be dismantled.
White people?
White people.
We should be dismantled?
Yes.
Like taken apart?
Well, whiteness, so I guess if we're too white, what do we do? We can't do blackface. That would be politically incorrect.
Get a suntan.
Maybe. Anyway, so she had a lecture called Elephant in the Room, a grown-up conversation about whiteness. Lisa Anderson-Levy, an anthropology professor at Beloit College, believes that teaching is a political act And so she wanted to share her thoughts on the violence of whiteness.
Okay, she needs to be expelled from the country.
Yeah.
Let her go to Somalia with Omar and see if they like it there, in the dark-skinned people.
She wants to decenter whiteness as one of the most urgent social dilemmas of our time. Analyzing and understanding the intersectional operation of whiteness has the potential to shift paradigms if there is will and courage.
Okay, she needs to get deprogrammed.
And speaking of programs, she was invited as part of a program used to highlight successful alumni.
And she's one of those.
Yeah. And then speaking of Minnesota and snow. Now, did you read this? Because we kind of remember we reported about all the dust that came across from, they said...
Mexico?
No, they said it came from like Saudi Arabia or
Africa,
to Texas.
Like, really?
Well, guess what? That dirt now went to Minnesota.
No wonder.
Yeah, they call it snert. I don't know why. I guess snow and dirt.
Because it's snow and dirt combined.
So they said a brown and tan color of snow on the ground up in Minnesota now is because this dust went from Texas now up to Minnesota.
So maybe the Texans, polluted it and then blew it up to the Minnesota where it fell in the snow.
I just think it's kind of crazy. So I don't know if that's
You think?
true. I don't know if that's true.
You think it's crazy?
That's what they're telling people.
Brilliant.
So.
This is why aliens come here.
I guess. So now what are we in the middle of? We have our webinars going on right now, and then we have one more session in May. Yeah. If you want to join us, you may. We still have a few openings.
And then I'm going next month to Houston where I will investigate the snert. And then I'll be going to Istanbul after that.
Okay.
And then you are going to...
Yeah, to Italy on our Clear Health and Healing Tour. One more space. And I want to remind you, the tour closes April 30th. You only have a couple more weeks to sign up. So if you want that one space, let me know.
And then we're still working on Neva's for end of October, early November.
And we have September class.
Oh, September. I forget about
September. I know you
class.
always miss that September Spectacular, right?
Right, which may be my last one.
I don't know. And we got tons of books here if you want to read up about us. So, True World History. This also talks about the Waldensians, which we're going to be studying when we go up into the mountains of Italy, northern Italy. Blue Blood, True Blood. Of course, your Montauk, The Alien Connection, Stuart's autobiography. We have tons of books. This is the affirmation book we use for the webinar series, which is really great. This is the webinar series we just finished. And those of you who are members on our site, we have 3 years worth of webinars, which are free to you as a member, less than $1 a day. So be sure and get your membership. So we have tons of books, health and healing, you name it, we got it.
Yeah, and we also have 3 new books coming out this year. Maybe a 4th, but at least 3.
No, that's the plan.
That's the plan. If you will do your work.
If you will do your work.
I did.
Yeah.
Now it's up to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, people, what can I tell you? A lot of things are going to be changing very quickly. It'll be a very interesting April through the rest of the year. And so those of you in the Midwest, be safe in the snow. And those of you in the South, be safe in the tornadoes. And we'll see you next week.
Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Bye.
Bye.